Joining me now is the Dr. David Johns. He's the executive director of the National Black Justice Coalition. It's a civil rights organization that advocates for the Black queer community. Dr. Johns, my beloved, thank you for being here. I want to go straight to unpacking the mental and emotional toll that your community, part of our community, must be experiencing right now. I saw you on my colleague Mark Lamont Hill's show just last night talking about the legislative part, but we want to really talk about what the emotional impact is for the queer community.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Fran. I'll just state that in the last week alone, I've received 2 phone calls from mothers who are preparing to bury their babies because they have died by suicide. Also sent a letter to Kamika Shelby, the mother of Nigel Shelby, who this year would have been 19 years old, but also died by suicide in Huntsville, Alabama, after being bullied and complaining about being bullied to adults who did nothing. Actually, they did something. What they did was put on music and told him to dance because it would make him feel better. We often don't think about the psychological implications of existing in bodies that are being criminalized to no fault of our own. And those of us that have multiple marginalized identities face disproportionate challenges emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. And at this moment, there are elected leaders, appointed leaders, not only throughout the state that I'm in now, but our country, as well as on the continent of Africa, that are restricting our ability to access the care we need in order to not simply survive, but to thrive.
Other than having conversations with our friends and family of the queer community, what else can we do to make sure that young Black and all Black queer folks know that there are safe spaces within Black community for their existence?
One, we should all have a therapist, a good therapist, and be willing to do the work required to deal with the toxic stress, prolonged exposure to trauma, and everything connected to being Black in this country. If we are able to demonstrate wellness and employ tools to ensure that we are happy and whole, we can model that for other folks. The second thing is to respect people's pronouns. I get too tired when adults simply say they don't want to use pronouns respectfully or acknowledge people in the ways that they show up. The least we can do is honor people by using the names that are most comfortable and important to them. The third thing is to be a safe space. We can all do work to increase our competence, to get beyond our own feelings, to make space for members of our beautifully diverse community. And I hope people look at NBJC as a resource in that regard. We have tons of resources. We'd love to help you in being an active accomplice. And so anybody that cares about Black folks should care about all of us and work to ensure that we are well holistic.
Yeah, and because people on social media, David, like catchphrases when we talk about Black Lives Mattering, what I've heard you say, and I full-heartedly co-conspire with you, all Black lives have to matter. You mentioned the disproportionality of Black queer suicide. We know, according to a recent study by UCLA Law, more than 60% of suicide attempts amongst LGBTQ plus people happen within 5 years of them realizing that aspect of their identity. What does that correlation say to you, David?
2 things. One, I imagine that it's an underreported number, given the way that data is often collected and our justifiable mistrust of institutions that collect data, often to use it against us or to weaponize it. 2, what it says to me is that our community is continuing to ring the alarm, and we need to listen. What it also says to me is, what is a solution? The Trevor Project, which also provides data on this topic, has showed that people identify support, loving members of their family or their community as the single most meaningful factor in supporting people who are experiencing suicidal ideation. And so what I really want to encourage people to do is to lead with love, to increase competence and demonstrate compassion so we can all thrive.